I was sitting there in that cheap office chair they never replaced, the one with the weird stain I'd been looking at for 6 years, when Elliot slid the folder across his desk with that same practiced expression. Half grimace, half smile. I knew what was inside before I even opened it. Rejection number 12. 12 times. 12 times I'd been passed over for senior consultant. And I already knew who got it instead of me, Kirsten. 8 months at the company. 8 months. The thing is, Daphne, Elliot said, leaning forward like we were co-conspirators instead of whatever we actually were. Q4 isn't our strongest quarter for leadership transitions, but I've already put your name at the top of the list for spring promotions. I nodded like I believed him, like I hadn't heard almost those exact words 11 times before, like I hadn't trained every person who'd been promoted above me since 2018. Then I did something that surprised even me. I started laughing. Not cute giggles, the kind of laugh that makes people uncomfortable, the kind that says, I've finally snapped. Elliot's face did this weird thing. His customer service smile glitched. Something funny? Yeah, I said, still laughing. Me, I'm the joke for believing you. 12 times. So that's how it started. That's the moment I decided to burn it all down. Oh, wait, I should probably introduce myself. I'm Daphne. I was 33 when this happened, working at this boutique consulting firm called Paragon Strategic. We did business transformation consulting for healthcare companies. Sounds fancy, right? 6 years I'd been there. 6 years of being the person they called at 11 p.m. when everything was falling apart. 6 years of being told I was invaluable, but apparently not invaluable enough to promote. Before I go deeper into this mess, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever been in a situation where you felt completely invisible despite working your ass off. Because honestly, it helps to know I'm not alone in this. And trust me, this story goes places even I couldn't have predicted. So back to that office. That moment, I composed myself and told Elliot I understood. That I was a team player. Then I walked back to my desk, past Kirsten, who was literally showing her new business cards to anyone who'd look. Senior consultant. The title that should have been mine almost 3 years ago. Let me give you some context. Paragon Strategic was founded by 3 guys who worked at one of those big 4 consulting firms. They had this whole, we're different, we're family shtick. Elliot was employee number 6. I was employee 23, hired when they were still trying to prove themselves. I automated half their reporting systems. I saved their biggest account, Healspace Regional, when our project manager quit mid-implementation. I routinely worked 60-hour weeks. I delivered every single time. And it wasn't just that they didn't promote me. They'd tell me why. Always something different. You need more client-facing experience. So I'd get that experience. You need to demonstrate more leadership. So I'd lead a team. You need more technical expertise. So I'd get certified in whatever new system they were implementing. And after I'd check each box, they'd move the goalposts. Again, and again, and again. Meanwhile, they promoted people around me. Brody, who missed deadlines constantly but played golf with Elliot. Vivian, who couldn't build a basic reporting dashboard without my help but was best friends with our director of consulting. And now Kirsten, whose main qualification seemed to be that she went to the same business school as our CEO. I used to wonder what was wrong with me. Was I not charming enough? Not political enough? Wrong gender? Wrong background? I spent so much time trying to crack the code. But sitting there that day, watching Kirsten parade around with her new title, something just clicked. There was no code to crack. The system was just rigged. Not just against me, but against anyone who actually believed merit mattered. That night, I went home and cried. Like, ugly cried. The kind where you're sitting on your bathroom floor at 2 a.m. wondering how you became this person. I called my sister Renee, and she listened to me rant for an hour. Then she said something that changed everything. So quit. I can't just quit, I said. I've invested 6 years. That's just sunk cost fallacy talking, she said. Renee's an economist. She's always diagnosing my life problems with economic theories. It's not that simple, I argued. The job market is tight and I need— No, Daff, she interrupted. I didn't say find another job. I said quit, as in, stop giving them your best. Stop caring. Stop trying to earn the approval of people who clearly have no intention of giving it to you. I sat with that for a minute. That's not who I am, I finally said. Maybe it's who you need to become, she replied. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about what Renee said, about how I'd spent 6 years trying to prove myself to people who had already decided not to see me. And something hardened inside me. A plan started forming. See, I knew things. I knew how everything at Paragon actually worked, not how they claimed it worked in their fancy pitch decks. I knew which clients were on the edge of leaving. I knew which projects were behind schedule. I knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. And most importantly, I knew that despite being denied a promotion 12 times, I was the glue holding at least 5 major client relationships together. The next morning, I went to work like normal. I smiled at Elliot in the hallway. I congratulated Kirsten. I answered frantic emails from project teams. But something had changed. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Instead, I started documenting. Everything. Every process I'd created. Every workaround I'd invented. Every client relationship I'd salvaged. I organized it all into a private digital notebook. Not company property. My property. Then I created what I called my indispensability map. It was a detailed analysis of exactly how much the company depended on me, where the critical dependencies were, and this is important, which clients had relationships with me specifically rather than with Paragon as a whole. You might be thinking this sounds calculated, cold even. And you know what? You're right. But 12 rejections will do that to a person. 12 times being told you're not quite good enough when you know damn well you are. It changes you. I gave myself 6 months. 6 months to execute what I started calling my quiet exit. Not quiet quitting. That's when you do the bare minimum. No, I kept working just as hard. But my goal had changed. I wasn't working for a promotion anymore. I was working for myself. The first phase was making myself even more indispensable. Counterintuitive, right? But necessary. I volunteered for the most complex client problems. I became the go-to person for troubleshooting. When our biggest client, HealSpace, had an issue, they'd call me directly, not Paragon's support line. I was careful about it. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't create unnecessary dependencies. I just positioned myself as the solution to problems that already existed, and I documented it all. The second phase was building my escape hatch. I started having coffee with former colleagues who'd left for other firms. I updated my portfolio. Not my resume, my portfolio. Because I wasn't looking for another job, I was laying groundwork for something else entirely. Phase 3 was the trickiest. I had to start detaching emotionally while still appearing invested. I stopped taking it personally when Elliot would take credit for my ideas in meetings. I stopped feeling hurt when I wasn't invited to leadership lunches. I started seeing Paragon not as the company I'd given 6 years of my life to, but as a stepping stone to what came next. Around month 4 of my plan, something unexpected happened. They promoted someone else again. Lucky number 13. This time it was Theo, a guy who'd been there 2 years and whose main qualification was being aggressively mediocre but very, very confident about it. Normally this would have devastated me, but I just smiled and congratulated him. Elliot looked confused by my reaction. He'd expected tears, or at least for me to come to his office later to ask what I needed to do better. But I didn't. I just kept working on my plan. By month 5, I'd saved enough money to live on for 6 months without income. I'd incorporated my own consulting business, just on paper at this point. I'd secured a small business loan. And I'd started having very careful, very private conversations with 2 of Paragon's clients who I knew were dissatisfied. I wasn't poaching, not technically. I was just being helpful, answering questions, providing insights, building relationships outside the Paragon umbrella. Then came the day. 6 months to the day after rejection number 12. I walked into Elliot's office without an appointment. "I quit," I said, placing my resignation letter on his desk. His face went through about 5 different expressions in 3 seconds: shock, disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, the one I was waiting for: panic. "You can't quit," he said. "We're in the middle of the Heal Space implementation. You're leading the Meridian Health Project. We need you." I just smiled. 2 weeks' notice. It's all in the letter. "Is this about the promotion? Because we can talk about that. Q3 is coming up, and I've been advocating for you." I cut him off. "No, Elliot. This isn't a negotiation. I'm leaving." And now we're at the part where it gets really interesting. The part where my 6 months of careful planning starts to pay off. The part where they finally realize exactly what they're about to lose. But before I get into that, I need to take a quick breath because even now, 2 years later, telling this story makes my heart race. Makes me remember how terrified I was, how close I came to backing down, how many times I almost convinced myself to stay in that comfortable misery rather than risk everything on myself. So, do you want to hear what happened next? How they reacted when they realized what I'd done? How my revenge wasn't just sweet, it was sustainable. Because trust me, watching them beg was just the beginning. The 2 weeks after I quit were absolute chaos. I've never seen a workplace implode so spectacularly, and I had front row seats to the whole thing. First, Elliot tried to convince the partners that they could easily replace me. Called an emergency leadership meeting, which, ironically, I wasn't invited to, where he apparently said, "Daphne's contributions have been valuable, but we have strong systems in place." That's when they started discovering just how wrong he was. See, I hadn't realized how much of Paragon's infrastructure I'd quietly built over the years. All those late nights fixing things nobody else wanted to deal with. All those workarounds I'd created because the official processes were garbage. It was like I'd been holding the company together with duct tape and determination for 6 years. By day 3 of my notice period, the panic had set in. Suddenly, Elliot wanted me to document everything I did. He scheduled daily knowledge transfer meetings. He even asked if I could create training materials for my replacement, who, by the way, didn't exist yet. "Sure," I said, smiling sweetly. "My hourly consultation rate is $275. His face when I said that? Priceless. Like I'd suggested he give me his firstborn child. You work here," he sputtered. "For 11 more days. I corrected him. He complained to the partners, of course. But they were already in panic mode because HealSpace, our biggest client, had gotten wind that I was leaving. Their CIO, Lorraine, had called Paragon's CEO directly. I only know this because the CEO's assistant, Ren, told me over lunch. She said, and I quote, "If Daphne's not on our account, we need to revisit our contract," Ren whispered across the table. I've never seen Vernon sweat like that. By the end of the first week, they made their first offer. Elliot called me into his office where he sat with Vernon, the CEO. "We've been discussing your value to the company," Vernon said. Like this was a revelation and not something I'd been trying to tell them for 6 years. "We'd like to offer you the senior consultant position, effective immediately, with a 15% raise." I almost laughed. The promotion I'd been begging for, suddenly available now that I was walking out the door. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I've already made other arrangements." They looked shocked, like the idea that I might have options beyond Paragon had never occurred to them. "What would it take?" Vernon asked. "We can go to 20% on the raise." "It's not about money," I said, which was both true and not true. Of course, it was partly about money. I'd been underpaid for years, but it was more about respect, about recognition, about not spending another day in a place that had shown me 12 separate times that they didn't value me. By the beginning of the second week, things got desperate. Systems were breaking that only I knew how to fix. Clients were calling, asking specifically for me. The Meridian Health Project was behind schedule, and nobody could figure out the custom reporting dashboard I'd built. That's when they made their second offer. Senior manager skipping a level entirely, with a 30% raise and a seat on the leadership team. I declined again. "You're being unreasonable," Elliot said, his fake smile completely gone now. We're trying to make this right. 6 years, Elliot, I replied. You had 6 years to make it right. By day 10, Vernon himself came to my desk. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Name your price, he said quietly. Whatever you want. Director level. Choose your projects. Work from home. Just stay. For a split second, I wavered. Director level would have been beyond anything I'd ever dreamed of at Paragon. The money would be life-changing. The power to choose my own projects was tempting. But then I remembered. 12 rejections. 12 times being told I wasn't quite good enough. 12 times watching someone less qualified walk away with the promotion I deserved. I'm sorry, I said, but my mind is made up. On my last day, I did something that surprised even me. I was professional. I handed over everything they'd asked for. All the documentation, all the contact information, all the project status updates. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't sabotage anything. I just left. As I was walking out, carrying my sad little box of desk plants and coffee mugs, Elliot stopped me in the lobby. You're making a mistake, he said. You won't last 6 months on your own. I just smiled. Watch me. Here's where the story shifts. Because my revenge wasn't quitting dramatically or making them panic, though, that was satisfying. My revenge was what came next. Remember those 2 dissatisfied clients I mentioned? The ones I'd been having careful conversations with? The day after I left Paragon, I had official meetings with both of them. Not as a Paragon employee, but as the founder and CEO of my own consulting firm, Clarity Partners. 1 week later, HealSpace canceled their contract with Paragon and signed with me. Not just the implementation I'd been working on, their entire portfolio of projects. When Vernon found out, he called me apoplectic. This is a breach of your non-compete, he shouted. Actually, it's not, I said calmly. I never signed a non-compete. Check your records. He went silent, because he knew I was right. In all the paperwork over 6 years, they'd somehow never gotten around to having me sign a non-compete agreement. An oversight that was now costing them millions. 3 weeks after that, Meridian Health followed. Their COO told me later that when they called Paragon to cancel, Vernon offered to slash their rates by 40%. They declined. By month 3, I had 5 clients, 3 from Paragon and 2 new ones through referrals. I was making triple what I'd made at Paragon. I hired my first employee, Tanya, a brilliant analyst who'd been overlooked at her previous firm. The best part? I didn't have to work 60-hour weeks anymore. I set boundaries. I charged what I was worth. I built systems that worked from the start instead of patching broken ones. At month 5, something unexpected happened. Kirsten, remember her? Promotion number 12? Reached out to me on LinkedIn. She wanted to meet for coffee. I'm miserable, she confessed, stirring her latte nervously. Everything's falling apart there. Nobody knows what they're doing. The HealSpace account is a disaster. Elliot blames everyone but himself. I nodded sympathetically. None of this surprised me. They talk about you like you're the bogeyman, she continued. Vernon actually banned anyone from saying your name in meetings, but they also can't stop talking about how things worked when you were there. I couldn't help but feel a little smug, but also sad. Sad for the people still trapped there. Sad for the 6 years I'd wasted trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see my value. Why are you telling me this? I asked her. She took a deep breath. I want to work for you. I nearly choked on my coffee. Excuse me? I know it's weird, she said, and I understand if you say no, but you built something amazing in just a few months. You're doing the work you want to do, with clients who respect you. That's what I want. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Was this some kind of corporate espionage? A trick to get me to reveal my client list? But all I saw was exhaustion, and something I recognized intimately, the desperate need to be valued for your work. Send me your resume, I said finally, and we'll talk. 6 months to the day after I left Paragon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a familiar voice came through. Daphne, it's Vernon. My heart skipped a beat. Hello, Vernon. What can I do for you? We need to talk, he said, his voice strained. Things here are. We're struggling. The quarterly numbers are the worst they've been in 5 years. We've lost 7 more clients since you left. I waited, saying nothing. We want you back, he finally said. We'll match whatever you're making now. Double it even. Director level, equity stake, whatever you want. I closed my eyes, taking in the moment. This right here, was what I'd wanted to hear for so long. Validation, recognition, the admission that I had been right all along. But it came too late. I appreciate the offer, I said, echoing the words I'd used when rejecting their previous attempts to keep me. But I'm not interested. We're desperate, he admitted, his voice cracking. Please, just come in for a meeting. Name your terms. That's when I realized something important. My revenge fantasy had always ended with them begging me to come back and me triumphantly accepting on my terms. But now that it was actually happening, I discovered I didn't want to go back. Not for any amount of money, not for any title. Because I'd built something better, something that was mine. I'm sorry, Vernon, I said, and I was surprised to find I actually meant it. But I've moved on, and you should too. After I hung up, I sat at my desk, my real desk, in my real office, with my company name on the door, and I cried. Not sad tears, not angry ones. Relief, release. The final letting go of 6 years of feeling not quite good enough. Today, Clarity Partners has 17 employees. We've doubled our revenue each year for the past 2 years. We're selective about our clients, our projects, and most importantly, how we treat our people. Kirsten is now my director of client services. Turns out, when she's not trapped in a toxic workplace, she's actually brilliant. Tanya runs our analytics division. We even hired Ren, Vernon's former assistant, as our operations manager. Paragon? They're still in business, but they've downsized dramatically. Elliot was let go last year. Vernon reached out again 6 months ago, this time proposing a merger. I declined politely. The revenge wasn't in watching them struggle. It wasn't even in building something successful of my own. The real revenge was discovering that I never needed their validation in the first place. That I could value myself even when they didn't. The 12 rejections? They were actually 12 redirections, pushing me toward where I was supposed to be all along. So if you're sitting there right now, feeling overlooked or undervalued or stuck in a place that doesn't recognize what you bring to the table, please hear me. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to keep auditioning for people who have already decided not to cast you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. And look, I know this story might seem too perfect, too neat, but I promise you it's real. I have the battle scars and the tax returns to prove it. If you connected with any part of this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to walk away from something to find your true worth. I read every comment, and your stories help me feel less alone in mine. Thanks for listening to me ramble for so long. Sometimes I still can't believe how different my life is now compared to where I was 2 years ago. Just remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. See you in the next video. This ends now. Your so-called strategic vision is destroying everything we've built. I slammed the quarterly report onto the glossy table. Jackson's face flushed crimson as 24 executives stiffened in their chairs. His knuckles whitened around his titanium water bottle. Miss Thorne, you've been a thorn in my side since day one, he said, voice dangerously quiet. This company needed modernization, and all you've done is obstruct progress at every turn. Progress? You call gutting health benefits for 3,000 workers progress? You call shipping jobs to factories with zero safety regulations innovation? His nostrils flared. I'd struck a nerve. The room temperature seemed to drop as executives avoided eye contact, studying their notepads with sudden fascination. Your military background makes you uniquely unqualified to understand modern business necessities, Jackson said, standing to his full height. The board selected me because I deliver results. Perhaps in your world of following orders and rigid hierarchies, you never learned how real businesses operate. The words stung more than I let show. 6 months of watching this man dismantle a 70-year legacy had pushed me past my breaking point. Those real business tactics include the $3.4 million you've allocated for executive retreats while canceling retirement contributions? I asked, opening another folder. Jackson's eye twitched. Where did you get those figures? The same place I found documentation of your plans to remove the Harrington name from all products and facilities. His face transformed into something ugly. You've accessed confidential materials. That's grounds for immediate dismissal. He pressed the intercom. Security to the main boardroom. Now. 2 uniformed officers entered within seconds. Standard procedure for removals. I'd seen 3 executives escorted out during Jackson's brief tenure. But something unexpected happened. The officers looked at me, and their expressions changed. Both men straightened their postures instantly. "Ma'am!" The taller officer snapped a perfect salute. "Admiral Thorne, it's an honor." His partner followed suit. "Yes, ma'am, Admiral." The room fell completely silent. Jackson's mouth opened and closed, like a fish pulled from water. "These disruptions cannot continue," he finally sputtered. "Remove her immediately." Neither officer moved. "Ma'am?" the first asked, clearly uncomfortable with conflicting chains of command. I straightened my spine, muscle memory from 30 years of service taking over. "At ease, gentlemen. I appreciate your respect, but company protocol must be followed." I gathered my papers methodically. "I'll leave voluntarily." As I stood, using my cane for support, the boardroom remained frozen in collective shock. Though before I go, I added, "I should mention that tomorrow's emergency shareholder meeting might be of interest to everyone here." I locked eyes with Jackson, "Especially you." His face drained of color as I limped toward the door, the officers stepping aside with subtle nods of respect. "This is ridiculous," Jackson sputtered. "What shareholder meeting? On whose authority?" I paused at the threshold. "Mine. If you're still with me through this tense standoff, please show your support with a like or subscribe." The story of how I ended up in this corporate battleground and what happens next gets much more intense from here. My name is Rita Thorne. For 30 years, I served in the United States Navy, climbing ranks through dedication and strategic thinking until I earned my Rear Admiral stars. I never expected to trade my uniform for business attire, especially not with my damaged leg and the nightmares that followed my last classified operation. The manufacturing company where this confrontation occurred was founded by my grandfather, Edwin Harrington, who built it from a small workshop into an industry leader. His portrait still hung in the lobby. For now, Jackson had scheduled its removal next month, along with every other trace of our family legacy. When I returned from overseas 3 years ago, my plan was simple: recover from my injuries, adjust to civilian life, and find purpose beyond military service. My cousin Patrick, who had been CEO for 15 years, suggested I join the board. "Keep it in the family," he'd said. I agreed on one condition: nobody would know my relation to Edwin. I wanted to earn respect, not inherit it. For 2 years, I served quietly, learning the business while Patrick maintained the company values. Then came his diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Within months, he was gone. The board, pressured by activist investors demanding higher returns, hired Jackson Webb, a darling of the business press known for aggressive restructuring of underperforming companies. His first day, he announced his vision: streamline operations, maximize shareholder value, and bring this company into the modern era. Translation: costs, pump stock price, cash out. I limped to my office after the boardroom confrontation, my hand trembling slightly as I closed the door. The pain in my leg always intensified under stress. The titanium pins holding my femur together seemed to burn whenever I pushed myself too hard. My phone buzzed. A text from Linnea in Human Resources. "He's closing the Employee Child Care Center. Effective immediately." The child care center my grandfather had opened in 1977, believing working parents deserved peace of mind. The center that had cared for over 3 generations of employees' children. I sank into my chair, memories flooding back. The day my grandfather showed me the factory floor, when I was 7, how he knew every employee by name, how he'd established the first retirement plan in the industry when competitors offered nothing. "Business isn't just about products," he'd told me. "It's about people." My office phone rang. Trevor from legal. "Rita, he's on a rampage. He's demanding access to all board member communication records and threatening termination for anyone in contact with you." "He can't do that. He's the CEO. He's doing it." A knock at my door. My assistant Dana peeked in, face pale. "Miss Thorne, Mr. Webb wants your office cleared by end of day. Security will escort you out at 5. I nodded calmly. "Thank you, Dana." After she left, I opened my laptop and sent a single message to 16 key shareholders. Operation Restoration begins tomorrow, 9 a.m. The responses came quickly, all affirmative. I was gathering my personal items when my phone rang again. Unknown number. Admiral Thorne? A voice I hadn't heard in years. "This is Rita." "Commander Ellis, ma'am. I've been stationed at Naval Intelligence since we last served together. Something urgent has come to my attention regarding Jackson Webb. His financial ties are concerning." My heartbeat quickened. "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that involve national security. I can't say more over an unsecured line." "Where can we meet?" "The usual place. 1 hour." The line went dead. The usual place, our code for the memorial park where we'd held a service for our fallen team members. As I reached for my cane, the office door burst open. Jackson stood there, flanked by 2 different security guards. "You've turned my security team against me," he snarled. "I did nothing of the sort. Don't play innocent. I know who you are now. You think your military record intimidates me? You think being Edwin's granddaughter gives you special rights?" So he discovered my family connection, sooner than expected. "My rights come from owning 12% of this company's shares," I replied evenly, "and from the voting agreements I've established with other major shareholders." His confidence wavered visibly. "You're bluffing. Tomorrow's meeting will clarify that." Jackson stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Let me make something perfectly clear. I've dealt with people like you before. Sentimentalists, traditionalists, always standing in the way of necessary change. By this time tomorrow, you'll not only be off this board, you'll never work in any industry again." One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. "Is that a threat, Mr. Webb?" "It's a promise. I know people, powerful people." I stood, ignoring the searing pain in my leg. "So do I." We stood eye to eye, neither blinking. "You have 30 minutes to vacate," he finally said, turning to leave. "Jackson," I called after him. "My grandfather had a saying, never start a war unless you know exactly who you're fighting." He paused briefly, then continued walking. I had 30 minutes to gather what I needed before meeting Commander Ellis. 30 minutes before I'd learn exactly what national security concerns connected to the man destroying my family's legacy. And less than 24 hours to prepare for the most important battle of my civilian life. What I didn't know then was that Jackson Webb had even darker secrets than financial improprieties. Secrets that would shake our company to its core. Secrets some people would kill to protect. I left the building with my head high, aware of curious eyes tracking my departure. My car, a modest sedan I'd chosen for its trunk space rather than status, waited in the parking garage. As I drove toward the memorial park, my mind raced through contingency plans. Commander Ellis was already there when I arrived, standing beside the bronze statue of a sailor. His military bearing remained intact, despite his civilian clothes. At 45, his hair had more salt than pepper, and new lines marked his face. "Admiral," he said, the formality a habit neither of us could break. "Rita," I corrected, gripping his outstretched hand. "I've been Rita for 3 years now." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Old habits. Thank you for coming on short notice." We walked to a bench overlooking the harbor, far from other visitors, a security precaution I recognized from our operational days. "Jackson Webb," he began without preamble. "He's been on our radar for 16 months. His last 3 business turnarounds involved defense contractors." My skin prickled. "Go on." "In each case, he implemented aggressive cost-cutting measures, boosted short-term profits, then orchestrated acquisitions by overseas interests." Ellis handed me a thumb drive. "Companies with known connections to foreign intelligence agencies." "You're suggesting he's a deliberate actor? Not just a ruthless businessman?" "The pattern is too consistent. Each company he modernized had sensitive technologies. After acquisition, those technologies mysteriously appeared in foreign weapons systems. I thought of our company's aerospace division, the specialized parts we manufactured for military aircraft. Our defense contracts are small compared to our consumer goods. Small but crucial. Your proprietary aluminum alloy production method is classified. It's used in next-generation aircraft frames." The realization hit like physical pain, and Jackson's first move was replacing our head of aerospace with his own choice. Ellis nodded grimly. a man with 3 offshore accounts that receive regular payments from a shell corporation in Singapore. My grandfather had developed that alloy process during the Cold War. He'd refused to sell it, insisting it remain American-made for American aircraft. We've been building a case, Ellis continued, but Webb is careful. The FBI needs more time. And meanwhile, he's gutting our security protocols and calling it streamlining. I finished. Exactly. Last week, he downgraded clearance requirements for the manufacturing floor supervisors. My stomach tightened. That's not in any report I've seen. It wouldn't be. He's been keeping 2 sets of records, official ones for the board, and actual operational changes. That's why I contacted you. We need someone on the inside who understands the national security implications. The shareholder meeting tomorrow may be your only chance to stop him before the damage becomes irreversible. We spent the next hour reviewing the evidence, names, dates, financial transfers, a web of connections that left little doubt about Jackson's true agenda. Not just a cost cutter, but potentially something far worse. As Ellis prepared to leave, he hesitated. There's one more thing, Rita. Personal. His expression softened. How are you doing? Really? The unexpected question caught me off guard. 3 years since the operation that ended my career, and he was the first person from my old life to ask. I manage, I answered truthfully. Some days are better than others. The team still talks about you, what you did that night, saving those hostages when the extraction went sideways, and losing half our unit in the process. I finished, the familiar weight of guilt settling over me. No one blames you. The intelligence was bad. We walked into an ambush. The memories flashed unbidden. The firefight, the explosion, waking up in a field hospital with a shattered leg, and the knowledge that 6 good people weren't coming home. I appreciate the sentiment, I said, my tone making it clear the subject was closed. Ellis respected the boundary. With a final handshake, he left me alone with the weight of 2 crises, one from my past, one unfolding in real time. I had 12 hours until the shareholder meeting. 12 hours to prepare for a battle on multiple fronts, saving my grandfather's company and potentially stopping a breach of national security. My phone buzzed with a message from Beth, our elderly receptionist whom Jackson had scheduled for early retirement next month. Someone broke into your office after you left. It says your computer was accessed. So it had begun. Jackson was searching for anything he could use against me. Let him look. My military career had taught me never to leave sensitive information where it could be compromised. I drove to a small diner on the outskirts of town, one with poor cell reception and no security cameras. The kind of place I'd chosen for meetings during my intelligence days. A young waitress named Penny brought coffee without my asking. You look like you needed this, she said with a kind smile. Rough day? Just beginning? I replied. I opened my laptop, not my company one, but a personal device with military-grade encryption. Time to activate the network I'd been quietly building for months. First, an encrypted message to Darius in accounting, who had documented every questionable financial decision since Jackson's arrival. Then to Linnea in HR, who had cataloged the human cost of the modernization, the layoffs, the benefit reductions, the strategic removal of employees who'd been with the company for decades. Next, Marco in manufacturing, who had preserved the original quality control protocols Jackson had tried to eliminate. And finally, Leon in legal, who had secretly flagged the potential regulatory violations in Jackson's new operating procedures. Each responded within minutes. All were ready. The final piece was Yasmin, a cybersecurity expert I'd served with who now worked in the private sector. Her message was simple. File extraction complete. Evidence secured. For 6 months, I'd watched Jackson's destructive path through our company. For 6 months, I'd gathered allies and evidence, building toward this moment. Not just for my grandfather's legacy, but now for something bigger. My phone rang. An unknown number again. Is this Rita Thorne? A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Who's asking? My name is Imani Wade. I worked for Sentinel Industries until last year. Sentinel, one of the defense contractors Jackson had modernized before joining our company. How did you get this number? Commander Ellis suggested I contact you. I have information about Jackson Webb that might help you. Information I was too afraid to share until now. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can we meet? We arranged to meet at the diner in 30 minutes. I used the time to review the files from Ellis, looking for any mention of Imani Wade. Nothing. Either an oversight or deliberate omission. The diner door opened, and a woman entered, mid-30s, with watchful eyes that scanned the room before settling on me. She walked with purpose, sliding into the booth across from me. "Miss Thorne?" Her voice matched the phone. "Call me Rita." She nodded, hands clasped tightly on the table. "I was senior project manager at Sentinel, Specialized Components Division, until Jackson Webb arrived." "Yes," bitterness tinged her voice. "He called it strategic reorganization. Within 6 months, half our team was gone, replaced with people who asked too few questions about security protocols. What happened? Strange visitors, restricted areas suddenly accessible to new hires with minimal background checks. When I raised concerns, I was transferred to customer service. 3 weeks later, my position was eliminated." "You have proof?" She slid a small package across the table. "Access logs, visitor records, security override authorizations, all with Jackson's signature. Why come forward now?" Her eyes met mine directly. "Because yesterday, my former colleague, the one who helped me gather these records, died in a car accident. Single vehicle, no witnesses." A chill ran through me. "You think it wasn't an accident?" "I think nothing about Jackson Webb happens by accident." The implications settled between us like a physical presence. This wasn't just corporate malfeasance. It was potentially deadly serious. "There's more," Imani continued. 2 days before I was fired, I overheard Jackson on a call. He mentioned Harrington specifically. Said something about the old man's legacy being the perfect cover. My grandfather had been dead for 12 years. His name still carried weight in the industry, still represented quality and integrity. "You think our company was targeted specifically? Not just an opportunity?" "I think Jackson Webb has a particular interest in your family's business. And based on what happened at Sentinel, that's dangerous for everyone involved." As Imani shared more details, a clearer picture emerged. Jackson wasn't just dismantling our company's culture. He was systematically removing security barriers around our most sensitive technologies. We were nearly finished when the diner door opened again. A man in a dark suit entered, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on our table. Something in his posture, the controlled stillness, the alertness, triggered my operational instincts. "We need to leave," I said quietly. "Back exit, now." Imani's eyes widened, but she followed my lead without question as I dropped cash on the table and guided us toward the kitchen. "Friend of yours?" she whispered. "Definitely not." The man moved toward our table as we pushed through the swinging doors, startling the cook. "Sorry," I called, continuing toward the rear exit. "Emergency." Outside, I hurried Imani to my car, both of us scanning the parking lot for threats. "Who was that?" she asked as we pulled away. "Someone professional, someone who knew where to find us." I checked the rearview mirror. No obvious tail, which means our timeline just accelerated. The shareholder meeting was 12 hours away, but Jackson Webb was already moving against us. The question was, how much did he know about what we knew? And more importantly, what would he do to stop us from revealing it? The night stretched before us like an operational timeline. Imani and I drove to a small hotel outside the city limits, paying cash for a room where we could safely review the documents she'd brought. "These security clearance changes," I said, pointing to a highlighted section, "identical to what Jackson implemented last month at our facility." "Page 12 shows the timeline at Sentinel," Imani replied. 6 months from protocol changes to full acquisition by Meridian Global. And 3 weeks after acquisition, sensitive technology appears in foreign military exercises. I massaged my throbbing leg, a habit when stress intensified the pain. "We have 12 hours to stop the same thing happening to my grandfather's company." My phone buzzed. "Trevor from legal. Webb called emergency executive session for 7 a.m., preempting your shareholder meeting." Jackson was moving faster than anticipated. Classic tactical maneuver. Strike before your opponent is fully prepared. "He's trying to consolidate power before the shareholders assemble," I explained to Imani. "We need to accelerate." I called Darius in accounting, waking him from sleep. "Jackson's moving up his timeline. We need the financial records now." "I've got them, but there's a problem," he answered, voice tense. "Someone accessed my secure drive an hour ago. They might know what we have. Get somewhere safe. Send everything to the backup address." Next, I contacted Leon. His phone went straight to voicemail. Then Linnea, no answer. Marco picked up on the 4th ring, whispering urgently. 2 men came to my house asking questions. "My wife said I was out of town. Are you safe?" "For now," using my hunting cabin phone. "Stay there. I'll contact you through the secure channel." One by one, I discovered Jackson had moved against my entire network. Some had gone dark, following our emergency protocols. Others weren't responding at all. He's thorough, Imani observed grimly. Just like at Sentinel. But predictable, I countered. He's following the same playbook. That gives us an advantage. My military training took over as I formulated our response. Jackson expected me to defend. Instead, we would attack. He expected me to protect my network. Instead, I would activate my reserve forces. People he didn't know were connected to me. I called Yasmin, our cybersecurity expert. Time for Plan Omega. Already initiated, she replied. Remote archives activated. Dead man switches set. If anything happens to any of us, everything goes public automatically. Next, I contacted Ellis. Jackson's moving. He's identified some of my team. We suspected he might. That's why I held back certain information. Ellis paused. There's someone you need to meet. Now, the harbor warehouse. 20 minutes. The old warehouse had been a naval supply depot during World War II. Now, mostly abandoned, it stood as a hulking shadow against the night sky when we arrived. Ellis waited by a side entrance, accompanied by a slim woman with silver-streaked hair. Rita, this is Director Chen from Justice Department. Special Investigations. We shook hands, her grip firm and assessing. Admiral Thorne, your reputation precedes you. Former Admiral, I corrected. What's your interest in Jackson Webb? He's one piece in a larger puzzle. We've tracked 5 defense technology leaks to companies he's restructured, but Webb is merely the instrument, not the architect. You know who's behind him? We have strong suspicions. What we lack is definitive proof connecting Webb to foreign intelligence assets. That's where I come in, I surmised. Precisely. Your shareholder meeting provides the perfect opportunity. Webb believes he's outmaneuvered you. That makes him vulnerable. My priority is saving my company, I stated firmly. Our goals align, Chen assured me. Stop Webb, preserve national security, save your company, in that order. We spent the next hour refining our strategy. Chen provided additional intelligence on Webb's connections, including names of board members potentially compromised. Grace and Anthony, I said, recognizing 2 directors who had consistently supported Jackson's most aggressive cuts. They always vote as a block with him. Both have received substantial payments through the same shell company structure Webb uses, Chen confirmed. By 3 a.m., our plan was set. Ellis would coordinate with trusted security personnel. Chen would position federal agents discreetly around the building. Yasmin would monitor communications and be prepared to lock down digital systems. I would confront Jackson directly, the visible threat he expected, while the real operation unfolded behind the scenes. At 4 a.m., I returned to my apartment to shower and change. My dress uniform hung in the closet, untouched for 3 years. For a moment, I considered wearing it to the meeting, a symbolic statement of authority. Instead, I chose a simple charcoal suit. This wasn't about my military career. It was about my grandfather's legacy. As I fastened the small gold pin he'd given me on my graduation day, a miniature version of the company logo, my phone rang. Unknown number. Rita Thorne. Admiral. The voice was distorted. Deliberate electronic masking. I believe we have mutual interests regarding Jackson Webb. Who is this? Someone who knows Webb's real purpose at Harrington Manufacturing. Someone who knows what happened to your team 3 years ago wasn't an accident. My hand froze on the pin. Explain. The intelligence failure that led to your team's ambush. It came through channels Webb's associates controlled. Your retirement was convenient for certain interests. Cold fury rose within me. You're claiming my injury and the deaths of my team members were engineered to remove me from service? I'm saying patterns exist for those willing to see them. Webb specializes in removing obstacles, sometimes corporate obstacles, sometimes military ones. You have proof? Bring down Webb today, and proof will find its way to you. Fail, and certain documents regarding your final mission disappear forever. The line went dead. I stood motionless, mind racing through implications. If true, this connected everything: my military career, my grandfather's company, Jackson's appointment as CEO. Not coincidence, but calculation. I arrived at company headquarters at 6:15 a.m., earlier than expected. The lobby was quiet except for Beth at reception, whose surprised expression quickly turned to relief. Miss Thorne, they said you'd been terminated. Reports of my professional death are greatly exaggerated, I replied with a wink. Beth leaned forward conspiratorially. The executive session starts in 45 minutes. Mr. Webb has security posted at the boardroom doors. Any idea who's attending? The usual allies: Grace, Anthony, plus 3 directors who arrived from the airport an hour ago. They went straight to his office. Reinforcements. Jackson was consolidating support. Thank you, Beth. I headed toward the elevator but stopped. One more thing. Is Walter still handling building maintenance? Yes, 35 years next month. If Jackson has his way, Walter's last day is Friday. Walter, who had taught me to fish when I was 10, who had attended my commissioning ceremony, who knew every inch of this building. I found him in the maintenance room, surprised but delighted to see me. Little Rita, they said you were gone for good. Not quite yet. I explained what I needed. His weathered face grew serious as he nodded. Those access tunnels haven't been used in decades. Your grandfather had them built during the Cold War. Bomb shelter. Paranoia, he called it. But they'll get you where you need to go. At 6:55 a.m., while Jackson and his allies gathered in the boardroom, I was beneath it, following Walter through narrow utility corridors. We emerged through a maintenance panel into a small observation room connected to the boardroom by a one-way glass window, my grandfather's private viewing area for board meetings. He liked to watch discussions without influencing them, Walter explained. Said he learned more about people when they didn't know he was listening. Through the glass, I could see Jackson gesturing emphatically to 7 board members. His voice came through clearly thanks to the room's audio system. Undeniable evidence that Rita Thorne has accessed confidential documents with intent to damage this company. She's colluding with outside interests to block our acquisition by Meridian Global. This acquisition was never approved by the full board, objected Director Patel, one of the few who had consistently questioned Jackson's methods. The preliminary agreement is standard procedure, Jackson countered smoothly. The terms are extremely favorable to shareholders. And what happens to our defense contracts under foreign ownership? Patel pressed. Properly structured subsidiaries will maintain all necessary clearances, Grace interjected. The legal framework is solid. I checked my watch. 7:05 a.m., 25 minutes until the shareholder meeting. I messaged Ellis, in position, executive session in progress, web pushing acquisition approval. His response came immediately. Federal team ready. Warrant secured. I contacted Yasmin next. Status? Systems prepped. Financial records transferred to secure server. Audio feeds active. Recording everything. The final piece activated. I took a deep breath and messaged Walter. Now. Seconds later, the boardroom lights flickered. The projector Jackson was using went dark. Emergency lighting activated. Part of Walter's controlled power redirection. Just a system glitch, Jackson assured the room, visibly annoyed. Continuing with the vote, the boardroom doors opened. 2 security officers entered, the same ones who had saluted me the day before. Mr. Webb, the taller one announced. The shareholder representatives have arrived for the 7:30 meeting. They're insisting on immediate access as per corporate bylaws. That's impossible, Jackson snapped. The meeting isn't for 20 minutes, and we're in closed session. Actually, I said, entering through the maintenance door, the bylaws state shareholders may observe any board meeting except those discussing proprietary technology. Since you're discussing an acquisition, they have every right to be present. Jackson's face contorted with rage and disbelief. How did you... He regained composure quickly. This is a private session. Security. Remove her. Neither officer moved. That won't be necessary, came a new voice. Director Chen entered, flanked by 2 agents in suits. Jackson Webb, I'm serving you with a federal warrant regarding violations of the Export Control Act and suspicion of espionage. The room erupted in confusion. Grace and Anthony rose, attempting to leave, only to find additional agents at the doors. This is outrageous, Jackson sputtered. These accusations are completely unfounded. Are they? I approached the boardroom table, placing Imani's documents beside Jackson's presentation materials. These records show identical patterns at 3 different defense contractors. In each case, you implemented the same security downgrades, followed by acquisition by entities linked to foreign intelligence. Corporate restructuring follows predictable patterns, he countered. Similar problems require similar solutions, including solutions that compromise national security. I pressed a button on the conference system, and Yasmin's voice filled the room. Displaying financial transfers now. The screens reactivated, showing detailed transaction records, all payments from foreign entities to shell companies connected to Jackson, Grace, and Anthony. This is fabricated, Grace protested weakly. The Justice Department disagrees, Chen replied, as do the banking authorities in 3 countries who have been tracking these transactions. Jackson's eyes darted around the room, calculating odds, searching for escape routes. I recognized the look. I'd seen it in cornered operatives during my military career. "Rita," he said, voice suddenly reasonable, conciliatory. "Surely we can discuss this reasonably. There are aspects of these transactions you don't understand, national security implications that go beyond simple corporate governance." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "You were sent to dismantle my grandfather's company from within, to access our proprietary technology, to eliminate our defense capabilities. What I don't understand is why." Jackson laughed, a hollow sound. "You really don't see it, do you? Your grandfather built more than a manufacturing company. He created a defensive technological framework that has protected American interests for decades. Breaking that framework opens vulnerabilities across the entire defense sector. And who benefits from those vulnerabilities?" His smile was cold. "Everyone who's been waiting for America's industrial advantage to falter." "I've heard enough," Chen interjected. "Mr. Webb, please stand." As agents moved to detain Jackson, he pressed something in his pocket. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the building. "Fire evacuation protocol," he announced calmly. "In approximately 60 seconds, all electronic security systems will reset. All doors will unlock. Standard safety procedure." He'd planned this contingency, created chaos to cover an escape. "Yasmin," I called urgently into my phone. "Override fire protocols. Security lockdown." "Working on it," her voice came through, strained. "Someone's fighting me in the system." Jackson used the momentary confusion to lunge toward the private exit door. I moved to intercept, my damaged leg protesting sharply. We collided near the threshold, his momentum carrying us both into the corridor. "You destroyed my career," I hissed, gripping his arm. "You caused the deaths of my team members." His eyes widened in genuine surprise. "Your career? You think this is about you personally?" He laughed. "Admiral, you were simply an obstacle to removing your grandfather's technological safeguards, an unfortunate casualty in a larger strategy." With a sudden movement, he twisted away, shoving me hard against the wall. Pain exploded through my leg as I fell. Jackson paused, looking down at me with something like pity. "Your grandfather understood the global chessboard. Pity his granddaughter never developed the same strategic vision." He turned to flee, and found himself facing my entire network. Darius from accounting, Linnea from HR, Marco from manufacturing, Trevor from legal. Dozens of employees lined the corridor, forming an impassable human barrier. "These people," I said, rising painfully to my feet, "are my grandfather's legacy. Not the buildings, not the technology, the community he built." Jackson backed away, turning to find Chen and her agents blocking his retreat. "Jackson Webb," Chen announced formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, industrial espionage, and violations of the Export Control Act." As agents led him away, the building's intercommunication system activated. Yasmin had regained control. Throughout the facility, employees heard my voice. "This is Rita Thorne. As of this moment, by authority of the board of directors and majority shareholders, I am assuming the position of interim CEO. The acquisition has been terminated. All employee terminations are suspended pending review. We are reclaiming our company's future, together." 3 hours later, as federal agents continued gathering evidence, I sat in what had been Jackson's office, what had once been my grandfather's office. The portrait I'd insisted remain hung on the wall, his kind eyes seeming to approve. Director Chen entered without knocking. "Cleanup is proceeding well. Webb is cooperating, hoping for leniency. Will he get it? That depends on how much he reveals about his handlers." She placed a flash drive on the desk. "As promised, information about your final mission, the intelligence failure that cost your team their lives." I stared at the small device. Was it connected to all this? "Read it and decide for yourself." She moved toward the door, then paused. "By the way, we're recommending your company for a classified defense initiative. The country still needs your grandfather's innovations, and apparently, his granddaughter's leadership." After she left, I stood at the window, overlooking the manufacturing floor. Workers moved with renewed purpose, the news of Jackson's arrest and my appointment spreading rapidly. Walter had already removed the signs announcing the company's rebranding. The Harrington name would remain. I thought of my grandfather's words from long ago. "Business isn't just about products, it's about people." I pressed the intercom. "This is Rita. I'd like all department heads in the main conference room in 30 minutes. We have a company to rebuild." As I prepared for the meeting, I glanced again at my grandfather's portrait. We did it, I whispered. We protected your legacy. And somewhere, I imagined, he was smiling. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of people standing up for what's right. Let me know in the comments what you thought about Rita's journey from military leader to corporate savior. What would you have done in her position? Your support means everything as we continue sharing stories that matter. The glass conference room walls seemed to shatter when Brent slammed through the door, though nothing actually broke. 47 heads snapped up from their morning coffees. My husband's face burned crimson as he waved my tablet overhead like a trophy. I've got something everyone should hear, Brent announced, his voice unnaturally steady. The terrible calm in his eyes made my skin prickle with goosebumps. He tapped the screen and suddenly disconnected phrases from weeks of my work presentations blared through the room. My voice, chopped and edited, now sounding breathy and intimate. Need you tonight. Can't wait. Nobody has to know. Worth the risk. The conference room went tomb silent. Then came scattered gasps, someone's coffee mug clattering against the table. My lungs seized. I couldn't breathe as my boss Ingrid's eyes locked onto mine, her expression hardening from confusion to disgust. Turn that off, David whispered from across the table. He was the only one brave enough to speak. Brent's smile widened. The tech specialist himself speaks up. He silenced the audio and pulled something from his jacket, a small vial of clear liquid. Stand up, David. This is inappropriate, Ingrid started. What's inappropriate? Brent cut her off. Is what's been happening after hours between my wife and your star employee. Before anyone could move, Brent was behind David, emptying the vial over his shoulders. A putrid smell filled the room instantly, something between rotting eggs and ammonia. Special chemical compound, Brent announced. It reacts with certain proteins, the kind exchanged during intimate contact. Horror crawled across my skin as David stood paralyzed, the liquid seeping through his blue button-down. Within minutes, Brent continued, every spot where she touched you will glow bright yellow. Walk around, David. Let everyone see the proof. David's eyes found mine across the table, confused, humiliated, betrayed. We both knew those messages were about the toxic materials discovered in our newest children's products. Messages the senior team didn't want revealed. This is assault, David said quietly. What's assault is sleeping with another man's wife. Brent spat back. Walk, or I send the unedited audio to everyone in your contact list, including your mother who's so proud of her honest son. I opened my mouth, but no sound emerged. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the table edge, watching as David stood, the liquid dripping from his sleeves. He took one halting step, then another, circling the massive conference table, while my colleagues pressed themselves against the walls to avoid contact. The stench grew overwhelming. Someone gagged. Through my peripheral vision, I saw Gordon and Pierce, two senior managers who'd buried David's safety findings, exchange satisfied glances. David completed his humiliating circuit, stopping at the doorway, his dignity in tatters. Happy now? He asked my husband. Brent's expression changed then, something dark and satisfied settling over his features. Just getting started, he whispered. If you're finding this story captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe to follow this journey. Your comments fuel these stories. I'd love to know what you think will happen next. My name is Nora, and until that morning, I believed I was living the right kind of life. Responsible, ethical. I worked at Kidshine developing children's products. Everything from bottles to bath toys to nursery furniture. For 8 years, I'd built a reputation for thoroughness, for caring about the details others overlooked. Brent and I had been married for 6 years. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, always charming, always persuasive. We met at a charity auction where he outbid everyone for a weekend getaway package, then immediately asked if I'd join him. Bold, confident, magnetic. We never had children, my choice initially. Then his. We're too busy enjoying each other, he'd say whenever relatives asked. But the truth was more complicated. Somewhere in year 3, his attentiveness transformed into something possessive. Small freedoms disappeared. Friends I no longer saw. Hobbies that took too much time away from us. I adapted, believing relationships required compromise. When he installed home security cameras for protection, I accepted his explanation. When he began texting hourly check-ins, I told myself it meant he cared. The morning of the conference room incident had begun like any other. Brent kissed me goodbye, mentioned dinner plans. Nothing hinted at the storm brewing inside him. The liquid on David's shirt never turned yellow. There was nothing to reveal, because there was nothing between us, except professional concern. David had joined Kidshine 18 months earlier as head materials analyst. Brilliant, methodical, and painfully honest, he quickly earned respect throughout the company. 3 weeks before the incident, he'd requested a private meeting. The new Baby Dream crib line contains prohibited levels of flame retardants, he'd said, sliding test reports across my desk. And the Ducky Splash bath toys are leaching phthalates at 10 times the legal limit. I stared at the reports, stomach churning. This can't be right. I've tested them 3 times, he said. When I brought the results to Gordon, he told me to bury them, said they'd already manufactured 50,000 units. That night began our after-hours communication, strategizing how to gather enough evidence to force a recall before these products reached children. We worked separately, messaging only when necessary, building an airtight case to present to the company owners. I never told Brent, not because I was hiding an affair, but because he'd grown unpredictable whenever my work demanded extra attention. I'd mention a late meeting and watch his eyes cloud with suspicion. After the conference room humiliation, Gordon personally escorted David from the building, his belongings shipped later in a cardboard box. I was placed on 2 weeks personal leave while they assessed the situation. At home that night, Brent poured himself whiskey, seeming oddly energized. They offered me a consulting position, he announced. Impressed by my protective instincts, they said. Who offered you what? I asked, still numb. Gordon and Pierce. Said they need someone with my particular skills. He sipped his drink, eyes shining. Said you've been distracted lately, might need closer supervision. My mouth went dry. Brent, those messages were about product safety. David found toxic chemicals in children's items. We were gathering evidence. His laugh was sharp enough to cut. Save your stories, Nora. I've heard every word you two exchanged. You edited those recordings, I whispered. You purposely twisted everything. Brent set down his glass, approaching me with deliberate steps. A wife shouldn't keep secrets, he said softly, stroking my hair. I protect what's mine. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I realized the truth with crystal clarity. This wasn't love, it was ownership. And now he'd destroyed the one chance to protect countless children from harmful products. Maybe you're right, I whispered the next morning. Maybe I've been confused. Hope flickered in Brent's eyes. The anticipation of victory. I forgive you, he said magnanimously. I forced tears. I don't deserve you. Over the following days, I became the perfect, repentant wife. I called my boss, expressed contrition, requested an office transfer away from temptation. Brent monitored my phone calls, read my emails, drove me to and from work. At night, I'd catch him watching me with that satisfied smile, the smile of someone who believes they've won. The breaking point came during his sister Melody's wedding weekend. Brent seemed almost normal among family, laughing, dancing, playing with his 4-month-old niece Lily. We should reconsider having a baby, he suggested, his hand possessively circling my waist. That night in our hotel room, he fell asleep quickly, exhausted from socializing. A headache pounded behind my eyes. I reached for his toiletry bag, searching for aspirin, and found a small black notebook instead. The pages contained meticulous records of my daily life, what I wore, what I ate, who I spoke to, times I left rooms, how many minutes I spent in the bathroom. Each entry included a truthfulness rating and loyalty assessment. The most recent page had a new category, reproductive control timeline. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the notebook. Each page chronicled me like a lab specimen, not a wife, not a partner, but a possession to be monitored. The reproductive control timeline included dates, fertility windows, and a disturbing note, tampering complete, 03/14. I flipped backward through the pages, finding coded references stretching back years. Subject becoming resistant to suggestion techniques. New compliance methods tested. Friend Ashley removed successfully. The room spun around me. Ashley had been my closest friend since college, until she suddenly moved across the country 3 years ago. Before leaving, she'd tried to warn me about Brent. I'd defended him, chosen him. Now I wondered what removed successfully actually meant. The bathroom door felt miles away. I stumbled toward it, barely making it before vomiting violently. Kneeling on the cold tile, forehead pressed against porcelain, a single thought crystallized with perfect clarity. I needed to escape this marriage alive. When Brent stirred, I was back in bed. The notebook returned exactly as I'd found it. Not feeling well, I murmured when he asked why I was awake. Must have been the wedding cake. I told you not to eat the third slice, he said, pulling me against him, always trying to prove me wrong. The next morning, watching him play with baby Lily, something new unfurled inside me. Not just fear for myself, but for everyone touched by KidShine's toxic products, including this innocent child. His sister Melody had proudly shown me Lily's newly decorated nursery, filled with our company's products. Your brother helped us get everything at such a discount, she'd gushed. The Ducky Splash toys are her favorite bath time friends. Back home, I initiated phase 1 of my invisible rebellion. I think we need professional help, I told Brent, eyes downcast. I want to be better for you. His expression bloomed with triumph. That's very mature, Nora. And maybe we should sell this house, I added. Too many bad memories. We could start fresh somewhere new. Brent loved the idea. Another opportunity to isolate me further. As he researched neighborhoods and interviewed therapists who matched his specific criteria, I began rebuilding what he'd destroyed. First, I needed communication he couldn't monitor. Our teenage neighbor Zoe walked dogs for spending money. I paid her triple her usual rate to borrow her tablet for surprise anniversary research. Each night, while Brent showered, his one predictable 17 minutes of privacy, I reached out to David through an encrypted messaging app. Still have the test results? I wrote on day 3. His response came immediately. Everything. Been trying to contact Product Safety Commission. Nobody believes me without company letterhead. We need more than test results, I replied. We need visual proof consumers can understand. Over the next 4 weeks, while pretending to embrace couples therapy and house hunting, David and I reconstructed our case. He conducted additional independent tests. I secretly photographed internal memos, shipping schedules, and executive communications about the defective products. The yearly industry showcase approached KidShine's opportunity to display next season's offerings to retailers, parent bloggers, and safety advocates. Every major competitor would attend. Every important industry voice would be present. Brent had been invited as a special guest by Gordon and Pierce. They see my potential, he boasted. Said my protective instincts are exactly what the company needs. I'm so proud, I whispered, touching his cheek. You deserve recognition. The morning of the showcase, Brent selected my outfit, a conservative gray dress with a high neckline. Professional but not attention-seeking, he approved. We arrived separately. I'd convinced him I needed to support our team at the booth while he networked with executives. This is your moment to shine, I told him. Don't worry about me. The exhibition hall buzzed with activity. Elaborate product displays, demonstrations, champagne flowing freely. KidShine's booth stood prominently near the entrance. The controversial Ducky Splash toys and Baby Dream cribs featured front and center. I spotted Brent across the room, chatting with Gordon and Pierce, looking perfectly at ease among men who had buried evidence of harmful products. His laughter carried across the crowded space. Smile, Nora, hissed my colleague Trisha as I arranged pamphlets. The boss is watching. I smiled mechanically, my eyes sweeping the room. Right on schedule, a group of 8 influential parent bloggers entered, looking for new products to review. I'd contacted them weeks earlier using Zoe's tablet, promising an exclusive revealing demonstration. When they approached our booth, I stepped forward. Welcome to KidShine, I said warmly. Before I show you our newest offerings, may I ask, have you ever tested what your children are actually touching? They exchanged curious glances. I have something extraordinary to show you, I continued, reaching into my purse. Could each of you put these on, please? I distributed pairs of white cotton gloves and small ultraviolet flashlights I'd hidden in the lining of my purse. What's this for? Asked a blogger with millions of followers. Turn on the lights and run your gloved hands over any KidShine product, I instructed quietly. Then examine your gloves under the light. As they did, their expressions transformed from confusion to shock. Under the purple glow, invisible chemical residue on our products became brilliantly, unmistakably visible, matching exactly the harmful compound detailed in David's findings. What am I looking at? One woman demanded, her voice rising. Toxic phthalates at 10 times the legal limit, I said clearly. And the cribs contain prohibited flame retardants that cause neurological damage. Gasps rippled through the group. Phones emerged, recording the glowing evidence. Other attendees began clustering around, wondering what was happening. Across the exhibition hall, right on cue, David appeared on the main stage alongside three pediatricians I'd never met. The large screen behind them displayed molecular diagrams and test results. These chemicals have been linked to developmental delays, hormone disruption, and cognitive impairments, one doctor was saying into the microphone. The evidence comes directly from internal company testing, David added, his voice carrying through the speakers. Chaos erupted. Parents yanked their children away from our display. Retailers huddled in urgent conversations. Media representatives swarmed toward both our booth and the main stage. Through the commotion, I locked eyes with Brent across the room. Confusion gave way to dawning comprehension, then pure rage. He started pushing through the crowd toward me, but was immediately intercepted by panicking executives. A microphone appeared in front of me, thrust forward by a reporter. "Is it true these products are toxic?" she demanded. I took a deep breath. Those late-night work exchanges that sparked a jealous rampage were attempts to stop children from being harmed, I said clearly, including my husband's baby niece, who uses these products daily. The crowd parted suddenly. Melody stood there, Lily squirming in her arms, her face ashen. "What are you talking about, Nora?" she asked. "Your brother destroyed our safety investigation to control me," I said, loud enough for nearby cameras to catch. He knew exactly what we were discussing in those messages. The room seemed to freeze as understanding washed over Melody's face. She looked down at her baby, then across the hall where Brent stood, with Gordon and Pierce. The executives were already backing away from him, creating visible distance. "Is my baby in danger?" Melody whispered. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm so sorry." The rage that transformed her features matched her brother's from across the room. She clutched Lily tighter and strode toward him, each step purposeful as a hunting cat. I slipped my wedding ring off, placing it on the display table beside a toxic duck toy. Product safety advocates were already distributing the evidence packages I'd arranged to have delivered. Parents crowded around the pediatricians, asking frantic questions. Through the chaos, I watched Brent's face contort as Melody reached him, as she thrust her baby toward him in accusation. As Gordon and Pierce vanished into the crowd, no one stood beside him now. I turned away, moving toward the exit. A hand touched my elbow. David, looking simultaneously exhausted and alive. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," I corrected. "What happens now?" I paused at the door, looking back at the disintegrating showcase. "Now the children are safe," I said, "and I'm free." Behind us, someone called my name. I turned to see Trisha running toward us, face flushed with confusion. "Did you know?" she demanded. "All this time, did you know how dangerous these products were?" "Some of us tried to tell the truth," I said. "Some of us were silenced." "But why this way? Why not just report it to authorities?" I laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even me. "Because certain men made sure no one would believe us." I glanced back at Brent, now surrounded by angry parents and reporters. "And because some people only understand public humiliation." Trisha's eyes widened. "He's going to come after you," she whispered. "Let him try," I replied, pushing through the door into the bright afternoon sunlight. Outside, the warm air hit my face like freedom. David kept pace beside me. "Where will you go?" "Where?" I pulled Zoe's tablet from my purse. "I've been making arrangements." "Need company?" he asked. "Just until you're settled," he added quickly. "No pressure." I studied his face, honest, straightforward, so different from what I'd grown accustomed to. "Maybe," I said. "But first, I need to learn who I am without someone watching my every move." My phone buzzed, 27 missed calls from Brent in the past 10 minutes. As we reached the parking lot, it rang again. "Aren't you going to answer?" David asked. I silenced it permanently, dropped it into a nearby trash can. He doesn't get to control the conversation anymore. Across the lot, a taxi waited, another arrangement made through Zoe's tablet. The driver nodded as I approached. "You heading to the address you sent earlier?" he asked. "Yes," I confirmed, "and I'm not looking back." As the taxi pulled away, I caught sight of the exhibition hall doors bursting open. Brent emerged, scanning frantically in all directions. For a moment, our eyes met through the rear window. I held his gaze steadily until distance blurred his figure into insignificance. For the first time in years, I breathed without pain. The taxi wound through city streets as my mind raced. Freedom tasted strange, exhilarating, and terrifying simultaneously. I'd arranged temporary accommodations at a small rental cabin outside the city limits, paid in cash through an online marketplace using Zoe's tablet. "First time visiting our town?" the driver asked. making conversation. No, I answered. First time leaving it on my terms. 40 minutes later, gravel crunched beneath the tires as we approached a modest wooden structure nestled among pine trees. I paid the driver, including a generous tip for discretion, and stood alone as the taxi disappeared down the road. Inside, the cabin was basic but clean. Kitchenette, bathroom, bedroom, and small living area with a worn couch. No cameras, no monitoring systems, no husband tracking my movements. The silence felt like a physical presence. I placed my single suitcase on the bed and removed the burner phone I'd purchased weeks earlier. One text message waited from David. It's everywhere. Every news outlet picked it up. You okay? I replied simply, safe. Updates when possible. Next, I powered up the laptop I'd secretly purchased. Public Wi-Fi would be risky, so I'd arranged for a private hotspot under a different name. Opening the browser, I typed Kidshine Toxic Products into the search bar. The screen filled with breaking news stories. Major recall. Children's products contain dangerous chemicals. Industry scandal. Whistleblowers expose cover-up. Stock plummets. Kidshine faces multiple lawsuits. My throat tightened. Children would be protected now. But this was only the beginning. The doorbell rang, unexpected and jarring. My heart hammered as I approached the peephole. Had Brent somehow tracked me already? Relief flooded through me at the sight of an older woman with silver hair. The property owner, based on the listing photos. Just checking you found everything okay, she said when I opened the door. Not many folks out here this time of year. That's exactly why I chose it, I replied. I needed quiet. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Well, I'm just down the road if you need anything. No questions asked. After she left, I returned to my research. Brent would be looking for me, that was certain. He wouldn't accept losing control easily. But I'd spent years watching him, learning his patterns while he thought he was the only one observing. I knew exactly how he would react. First, he'd check our credit cards and bank accounts, all frozen now. Then he'd call friends and family, none of whom knew my location. Finally, he'd return home, certain I'd have to come back eventually for my belongings. What he wouldn't expect was that I'd already removed everything truly important weeks ago. Legal documents, irreplaceable photos, family heirlooms, small items taken gradually, their absence disguised by rearrangement. My phone pinged with another message from David. Press conference tomorrow. Kidshine execs throwing B under the bus, saying he misled them about product safety to pursue personal vendetta. I smiled grimly. Of course they would. Men like Gordon and Pierce never accepted responsibility. They found scapegoats. Brent had made himself the perfect target with his public meltdown. The next morning, I watched the press conference livestream. Gordon stood at a podium, face appropriately grave, announcing a complete recall of all affected products. He portrayed Brent as a manipulative outsider who had deliberately sabotaged their safety protocols to target an innocent employee. We were misled by someone we trusted, Gordon declared. Brent Walsh ingratiated himself with our executive team, while deliberately obscuring crucial safety data. We are cooperating fully with authorities. The camera panned to Pierce, who added, We have evidence that Mr. Walsh tampered with communications between our materials analyst and safety coordinator to create the appearance of impropriety. They were throwing Brent to the wolves to save themselves. The livestream cut to reporters questioning a haggard-looking Brent outside his home, our home. My wife is missing, he was saying, voice cracking with what looked like genuine concern. I'm worried she's been manipulated by her colleague. If anyone has information, I turned off the video, stomach churning. Even now, he was spinning a narrative that made him the victim, me the helpless pawn. His greatest talent had always been making others believe his version of reality. 3 days passed in relative solitude. I ventured out only for necessities, paid exclusively in cash. Each night, I added to my documentation a comprehensive timeline of Brent's control, manipulation, and eventual sabotage. Not for the authorities, not yet. This was for me, to prevent myself from doubting my own experiences when the inevitable guilt surfaced. On day 4, the landlady knocked again, this time holding a newspaper. Thought you might want to see this, she said, handing it over. The headline read, Pharmaceutical Rep Under Investigation. Corporate espionage and domestic abuse allegations mount. Beneath was Brent's professional headshot, confident smile, now seeming sinister in context. The article detailed how his former employer had launched an internal investigation, discovering he had frequently accessed confidential information outside his authorization. Thanks, I told her, hands trembling slightly. My sister works for the local shelter, she said carefully. If you need resources, just say the word. That night, another text from David. B showed up at my apartment, alternated between threats and bribes. Wanted to know where you are. What did you tell him? I typed back. That he should be more worried about what the SEC is finding in his financial records than where you're staying. I sat straighter. What do you mean? Remember how you said he kept mentioning his investment genius? Turns out he's been moving money through some questionable channels. Someone anonymous tipped off regulators. A small smile touched my lips. I hadn't tipped off anyone, but I knew who had. Melody, protecting her baby and punishing her brother simultaneously. Week 2 brought torrential rain and new developments. Kidshine announced leadership restructuring. Gordon and Pierce were stepping down to spend time with family. Corporate speak for forced resignation. The company appointed an independent safety review board headed by one of the pediatricians who had appeared with David at the showcase. Brent's media appearances grew increasingly desperate. He'd hired a private investigator to find me. He'd created a Find Nora social media campaign, portraying himself as the worried husband searching for his manipulated wife. Some believed him. Others remembered the exhibition hall incident, now immortalized in dozens of videos taken by shocked attendees. The footage of him humiliating David had also resurfaced, undermining his concerned husband persona. I continued gathering evidence, building my case methodically. Just as Brent had cataloged my every move, I now documented his history of control. Bank statements showing withdrawn funds I never saw. Medical records indicating canceled birth control prescriptions I hadn't authorized. Email exchanges with my former friends that had mysteriously stopped after he reviewed my accounts for security concerns. 3 weeks after my departure, I received a letter forwarded through multiple channels from Melody. Inside was a single page. He's going to lose everything. The investigation expanded to his personal finances. They found something big. I'm sorry I never saw who he really was. Lily and I are safe. Are you? That night, I made my decision. It was time for the final phase. I texted David, ready. The following morning, I dressed carefully in clothes I'd purchased specifically for this moment. Professional, but distinctly different from anything Brent had selected for me. I took a bus into the city, then a taxi to the federal building. The investigating officer listened intently as I provided my statement and evidence. We've been building a case against your husband, she explained. Your testimony connects several missing pieces. What happens now? I asked. We have enough for an arrest warrant, she replied. Financial fraud, corporate espionage, evidence tampering, domestic abuse. But we need you to understand the process can be challenging for victims. I'm not a victim anymore, I said quietly. I'm a witness. She nodded approvingly. We'll need you to come in tomorrow to sign formal statements. For tonight, we can arrange protective accommodation. That won't be necessary, I said. I know exactly where I need to be. Hours later, I stood on the front step of our home, Brent's home now. Twilight cast long shadows across the manicured lawn. Through the window, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear. The security cameras I'd once feared now worked in my favor. He would know I was here. The door opened before I could knock. Nora, he breathed, relief washing over his features. Thank God. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. May I come in? I asked formally. Confusion flickered across his face before he stepped aside. Of course. This is your home. The house smelled exactly as I remembered. His cologne, the lemon cleaner he preferred, the subtle staleness of closed windows. Everything looked unchanged, as though preserved in amber. You've lost weight, he observed, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. His expression hardened, then softened deliberately. The practiced modulation I'd seen countless times. You're upset. Understandable after everything that's happened. Those people manipulated you, Nora. But you're home now. We can fix this. Fix what exactly? I asked, moving toward the kitchen. The fact that you doctored messages to humiliate my colleague? That you've been monitoring my every move for years? That you tampered with my birth control? He followed, maintaining precise distance. You're confused. David poisoned you against me. No, Brent. You poisoned children's toys, then helped cover it up to get closer to executives. That's ridiculous. I never knew about any product issues. I smiled thinly, reaching into my bag. Remember how you always insisted on handling the home security system? How you showed me those camera feeds could be accessed remotely, from anywhere? His face paled slightly. What you didn't realize, I continued, is that they record automatically to cloud storage, including the night you met with Gordon and Pierce in our living room, discussing how to handle the troublesome safety reports while I was visiting my mother. I placed my laptop on the counter, turned it toward him. I've reviewed some interesting footage. Would you like to see? For the first time, genuine fear registered in his eyes. What do you want, Nora? Justice, I replied simply. For myself and for every child who could have been harmed. He lunged suddenly, reaching for the computer. I stepped back, already prepared. Don't bother. It's backed up in multiple locations, and federal investigators have copies of everything. You're bluffing, he whispered, but uncertainty had replaced his confidence. Am I? The same way I was hiding an affair? The same way I was confused about your controlling behavior? I moved toward the front door. Federal agents will be here tomorrow morning with a warrant. I suggested they come early. I know how you like to start your day promptly at 6. Understanding dawned on his face. You planned this all along. No, Brent, you planned it. Every time you monitored my calls, every time you isolated me from friends, every time you made me doubt my own perceptions, you created the perfect student of surveillance and strategic thinking. His shoulders slumped momentarily before anger sparked in his eyes. Nobody will believe you. I've built a narrative. The concerned husband, the loyal partner. You built it on quicksand, I replied. Check your email. While we've been talking, every person in your contact list has received unedited security footage of you discussing product safety cover-ups in our living room. Your sister received additional footage of you planning to tamper with my birth control. Your parents got the clips of you cataloging my movements in that little black notebook. The blood drained from his face. You can't. I already have. I reached for the doorknob. You taught me well, Brent. You demonstrated exactly how to destroy someone's reputation, their dignity, their sense of safety. The difference is, I did it with truth. His phone began buzzing incessantly, notifications flooding in as people viewed the footage. You'll have nothing, he hissed, desperation replacing calculation. I'll make sure of it. I already have everything I need, I replied. Freedom. I stepped outside, closing the door on his shattered world. David waited in a car across the street, engine running. Did he threaten you? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. He tried, I said, but his power was always an illusion I chose to believe in. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the house or the man inside it. Tomorrow would bring formal statements, legal proceedings, the slow, grinding wheels of justice. But tonight, I had reclaimed my story. Where to? David asked. Forward, I answered. Just forward. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories of courage and justice to light. Have you ever had to reclaim your power from someone who tried to control you? Share your experience in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone. You know what your problem is, Lexi? You're too desperate to fit in. Everyone can smell it. Like a wounded animal stumbling into a wolf den. His words pierced through the conference room. Silence. As my presentation slides flickered on the screen behind me, 8 pairs of eyes shifted uncomfortably. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. Grant leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the corner of his mouth lifting into that smile I'd grown to dread. The client needs confidence, not whatever this is, he continued, gesturing dismissively at my months of work displayed on screen. This design approach lacks vision. It's amateur hour. My voice caught in my throat as I tried to respond. The room tilted slightly. 3 months of late nights, research, and innovation, dismissed in seconds. The worst part wasn't Grant's criticism. It was how the others nodded along. Even Devin, who'd praised my concepts privately yesterday. I've taken the liberty of preparing an alternative, Grant announced, connecting his laptop to the projector. Something more aligned with professional standards. My hands trembled as his presentation appeared. Slide after slide of my designs, with minor color adjustments and his name in the footer. My research, my innovations, my concepts, all now bearing his signature. This is my work, I whispered, then found my voice. These are my designs. Grant's expression hardened. Be careful with accusations, Lexi. Nobody likes a woman who can't handle criticism. Maybe you should step outside until you've composed yourself. The department head cleared his throat. Let's take 5, everyone. As the room emptied, I remained frozen, staring at my stolen work. Grant lingered behind, approaching so close I could smell his cologne. Nobody will believe you, he murmured, his breath hot against my ear. Not against me. I've been here 7 years. You're just the diversity hire who couldn't cut it. Keep pushing, and I'll make sure you never work in design again." He straightened my presentation notes with mock helpfulness. "Some people belong in this industry, Lexi. You're not one of them." As he walked out, I noticed a small object drop from his pocket onto the carpet. Through my tears, I leaned down to see what it was, and my entire world shifted. In that moment, I didn't know it would lead to police officers storming our office, metal handcuffs gleaming as they approached his desk, or the emergency HR meeting where executives would stare at me with horror and newfound respect. I only knew that what I held in my palm would change everything. If you're invested in my story so far, please hit like and subscribe to support me sharing these difficult experiences. Your comments help me know I'm not alone in what happened. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Alexandra, Lexi to friends and colleagues. I've dreamed of working in architectural design since I was 12, sketching buildings in the margins of my notebooks, while other kids passed notes about crushes and weekend plans. My single mom saved every drawing I made, telling me I'd change skylines someday. I graduated top of my class, interned at smaller firms, and finally landed my dream position at Brookfield Design Associates 3 months ago. The firm had a reputation for innovative commercial spaces and a client list that made my heart race. I should have been suspicious when I realized I'd be the only woman on the 10-person design team, but I was too excited to care. "Your portfolio shows tremendous promise, Warren," the department head had said during my interview. "Your perspective is exactly what we need to stay competitive." My first day, I arrived an hour early, wearing a new outfit I'd carefully selected, professional but creative. The office hummed with activity, sleek and modern with glass-walled meeting rooms and open workspaces. 9 men looked up as Warren introduced me, their expressions ranging from polite interest to outright skepticism. Grant stood out immediately. Tall with perfectly styled dark hair and expensive clothes, he occupied the largest workspace near the windows. While others nodded hello, Grant merely assessed me, his eyes moving from my face to my portfolio case and back. "Impressive credentials," he said later, appearing beside my desk without warning. "Let's hope the talent matches the paperwork." I laughed nervously, missing the warning in his words. I'm excited to prove myself. The first 2 weeks passed in a blur of learning systems, meeting clients, and settling in. I noticed oddities but dismissed them, my computer occasionally showing different settings when I arrived each morning, files saved in folders I hadn't created, my chair height adjusted, small things, easily attributed to cleaning staff or my own forgetfulness under pressure. Then the hovering started. Grant would stand behind me, watching me work, offering guidance that felt more like control. "Your approach is interesting," he'd say, reaching over to move my cursor, changing my designs. "But clients in this market respond better to traditional elements. Let me show you." When I'd present my ideas in meetings, Grant would interrupt with counterpoints, speaking over me until I fell silent. What began as occasional corrections became constant undermining. If I suggested blue, Grant argued for green. If I recommended contemporary, Grant pushed for classic. One Tuesday morning, I arrived to find my desk drawer slightly open. My grandmother's bracelet, a simple silver chain I kept for good luck, was missing. I searched everywhere, asked everyone. Nothing. "Maybe you left it at home?" Devin suggested kindly. "Or maybe you should be more careful with your belongings," Grant added with a shrug. "Professional environments require organization." The next week, my prescription medication disappeared from my bag, then my special drawing pen. Small items, but personally significant. "You seem distracted lately," Warren commented after I searched my desk for the 3rd time that week. "Everything okay at home?" "I'm not distracted," I insisted. "Things keep disappearing from my desk." Warren's brow furrowed. "That's a serious accusation, Lexi. Are you suggesting someone here is taking your things?" Grant appeared beside us. "Lexi's been under pressure with the Westbrook project. We all misplace things when stressed." Their concerned expressions made me doubt myself. Was I becoming paranoid, forgetful? By the 2nd month, I'd started photographing my desk before leaving each night. I kept my bag with me at all times. I arrived earlier, stayed later, trying to catch whoever was gaslighting me. The isolation grew as colleagues began to avoid me, whispers following me to the break room. "Did you hear she accused the cleaning staff of stealing?" My friend at Henderson said she had issues there too. "Warren's too nice to say anything, but she's not meeting expectations." I never said these things. I'd never worked at Henderson, But denial only made me appear defensive. Then came the project sabotage. My files would become corrupted overnight. Clients who initially seemed enthusiastic about my concepts suddenly requested someone with more experience. My confidence crumbled as each opportunity to prove myself was systematically destroyed. "We need to discuss your performance," Warren said, after a particularly difficult meeting where Grant had smoothly taken over my presentation. "The creative industry isn't for everyone." "I just need more time," I pleaded, hating the desperation in my voice. "Something strange is happening here." Warren sighed. "Lexi, Grant has offered to mentor you. He's our top designer, and he's never extended this offer before. I suggest you accept his help." That night, working late, I was alone in the office, or thought I was until I caught movement reflected in my darkened monitor. Grant, watching me from the hallway. When he realized I'd noticed him, he approached with a sympathetic smile. "Still struggling with the Harrison proposal? I could take it over if you're overwhelmed." "I've got it, thanks," I replied stiffly. "No shame in admitting defeat, Lexi. Design requires thick skin." He leaned against my desk. "Some people just don't have what it takes." After he left, I packed up quickly, unnerved by our interaction. At home, I emptied my bag onto my bed and froze. There, nestled between my notebook and wallet, sat a small black device I'd never seen before. Round, smaller than a quarter, with a tiny blinking light. My hands shook as I examined it without touching it. A tracking device? A recording bug? Both? In that moment, everything clicked into horrifying focus. This wasn't random cruelty or professional rivalry. This was calculated, methodical, psychological warfare. And I finally understood what I was dealing with. Someone who wouldn't stop until I was broken or gone. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I researched tracking devices, harassment patterns, and most importantly, how to gather evidence without alerting my stalker. By morning, I had a plan. Grant wouldn't expect me to fight back. He'd expect tears, a resignation letter, or a breakdown. Instead, he was about to meet a version of me he never anticipated. What I didn't know then was how deep his obsession ran, or how many women had faced his tactics before me. I couldn't imagine the chilling discoveries waiting on his personal devices, or how many lives he'd destroyed with his mentorship. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I arrived at work with my battle plan in motion. The tracking device remained in my bag, now nestled inside a small fabric pouch alongside a decoy I'd purchased overnight. Let Grant think his surveillance continued undetected. My new smartwatch, rushed delivered and set up before dawn, looked ordinary, but continuously recorded audio when activated. A small camera pen sat in my shirt pocket, indistinguishable from a regular pen. If Grant wanted to monitor me, I'd return the favor with interest. "You look different today," Devin remarked as I settled at my desk. I smiled, just determined. Grant arrived an hour later, scanning the room before his eyes landed on me. He paused, perhaps noticing my changed demeanor, then approached with his usual calculated casualness. "How's the Harrison project coming along? Still struggling?" "Actually, I had a breakthrough last night," I replied, maintaining eye contact. Sometimes our best ideas come when we're pushed to our limits. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps even concern. I wasn't following his script. "Well, don't get too attached to your concept. The client has specific expectations." He tapped my desk. "I'll need to review everything before submission." As he walked away, I discreetly tapped my watch to stop the recording. First interaction captured. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented everything. The accidental coffee spill on my sketches, the missing client emails that Grant claimed never existed until I produced screenshots, the whispered comments when he thought no one could hear, emotional liability, diversity obligation, temporary problem. Each night, I transferred my recordings to encrypted storage, creating a timeline of harassment. I learned to predict his patterns, and de-escalated after successful presentations, grew bolder when Warren was away, and always lingered after hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What I didn't anticipate was discovering I wasn't his first target. While researching Grant's professional background for leverage, I found a pattern across his previous employers, talented women hired, then leaving within months. 3 different firms, 3 similar stories. Searching deeper, I found a blog post without names, how workplace stalking ended my design career. The details mirrored my experience exactly: missing items, corrupted files, professional sabotage. The writer described her harasser's methods in chilling detail. He collected trophies from each target, called them his souvenirs of surrender. My grandmother's bracelet, my special pen, trophies. The realization sent ice through my veins. This wasn't improvised harassment. It was a practice methodology. Grant had refined his techniques across multiple victims. And until now, he'd always succeeded. One evening, working late intentionally, I watched through my monitor's reflection as Grant entered the office. He checked for witnesses before approaching my workspace. I kept my eyes on my screen, pretending absorption in my task while my recording devices captured everything. He circled my desk like a predator, then stopped. Dedication, he said, startling me with his sudden voice. I admire that, even if it's wasted effort. I turned, maintaining a neutral expression, just finishing the Parkview presentation. Ah yes, tomorrow's meeting. He smiled. Your first major client presentation, isn't it? Nervous? Prepared, I corrected. We'll see. He leaned closer. Preparation only gets you so far. Some people simply lack the natural authority to command a room. Clients sense weakness, Lexi, like I do. My watch recorded every word, every threatening inflection. Thanks for the advice, I replied evenly. After he left, I stayed another hour, completing my work and backing up all files in multiple locations. Something about his confidence worried me. The Parkview presentation represented weeks of work, my chance to impress our biggest potential client. I couldn't know that by morning, every file would be corrupted, every backup inexplicably damaged, with embedded text visible only when the files crashed. Incompetent, unqualified, unwanted. When I discovered the sabotage, I didn't panic as Grant expected. Instead, I calmly walked to IT, ensuring multiple witnesses observed the corrupted files and their embedded messages. This isn't system failure, the IT director said, frowning at her screen. This is deliberate. Someone with access to your drive did this. The meeting was in 2 hours, no time to recreate months of work. As if summoned by my distress, Grant appeared, concern perfectly arranged on his face. Problem with the Parkview files? What terrible timing. Several colleagues gathered, watching the drama unfold. Everything's corrupted, I explained, allowing my voice to tremble slightly. All my backups too. That's devastating, Grant said, eyes gleaming. Such an important presentation. Then came his trap. You know, I always keep copies of team projects for situations like this. I have a version from last week. Not your final work, but better than nothing. The setup was perfect. He'd sabotaged my files, knowing I'd have no choice but to use his version, which would undoubtedly be modified to fail or show my work as inferior. Either I'd present nothing, or I'd present something designed to humiliate me. That's so thoughtful, I replied, noticing how his expression brightened at my apparent surrender. Could you send it over right away? When his files arrived, I opened them immediately, making a show of relief. This helps tremendously. Thank you, Grant. He walked away victorious, unaware I'd never opened those files in the actual presentation. Because during those sleepless nights of planning, I'd created an entirely separate version stored off-network on my personal drive. While Grant thought I was desperately reviewing his sabotaged files, I was actually transferring my real presentation to the conference room computer. When the Parkview executives arrived, Grant positioned himself prominently, clearly anticipating my failure. Warren introduced me with thinly veiled concern, having heard about the file disaster. I stepped to the front of the room, pulse racing but voice steady. Before I begin, I want to thank my colleague Grant for offering his backup files after this morning's technical issues. I nodded toward him. Fortunately, I maintain additional backups off-site for precisely such emergencies. Grant's smile froze as I launched into a flawless presentation of my original, uncorrupted work. The clients were enthusiastic, asking questions that I answered with growing confidence. When they announced their intention to proceed with my design concept, Grant's face contorted with barely suppressed rage. That evening, my watch recorded Grant's phone conversation in the empty office kitchen. She had another backup. I don't know how. Yes, I took care of her main files and the server copies. No, this is becoming complicated. She doesn't break like the others. More direct measures may be necessary. Direct measures. The threatening tone sent chills down my spine. Whatever psychological game we'd been playing had just escalated to something more dangerous. That night, I compiled everything: the tracking device, audio recordings, corrupted files with their embedded threats, photographs of my bruised arm from Grant's accidental shoves, screenshots of manipulated emails, and the pattern of harassment established through my detailed journal entries. I added research on his previous workplaces and the women who'd left after his arrival. Then I made 3 copies, one for the police, one for HR, and one secured in cloud storage. As I reviewed the evidence, I noticed something on one recording I'd missed. Grant speaking to someone on his phone. The medication is hidden with the others. My little collection. She's nearly finished anyway. Another week and she'll either quit or have a complete breakdown. They always do. My missing medication. The others. How many women had he terrorized this way? How many careers destroyed? How many lives altered? I made my decision. The next morning, I contacted the police with my evidence. The detective reviewed my materials with increasing concern. "This is methodical stalking and harassment," she said. "The tracking device alone is a criminal offense." But combined with everything else, she looked up from her notes. "You mentioned other potential victims?" "At least 3 I've identified," I confirmed. "Possibly more. We'll need to investigate further, but there's enough here for immediate action. We'll require a statement and may need access to your work area." I provided everything they requested, then returned to work as if nothing had changed. For 2 days, I maintained normal behavior, feeling Grant's watchful eyes, sensing his growing unease at my unexplained resilience. Then came Wednesday morning. Our team gathered in the conference room for our weekly status meeting. Grant arrived last, sliding into his usual seat across from me. Warren began reviewing project timelines. The conference room door opened. 2 uniformed police officers entered, followed by a detective in plain clothes. The room fell silent. "Grant Phillips?" the detective asked. Grant straightened. "Yes? What's this about?" "Please stand and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for criminal stalking, cyberstalking, property theft, and workplace harassment." As an officer recited his rights, Grant's eyes locked on mine, first in shock, then in burning hatred, as understanding dawned. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered as they secured handcuffs. "She's unstable. Ask anyone here." No one spoke. The evidence the police had discovered spoke volumes. When officers searched his apartment with a warrant, they found his collection, items taken from women across multiple companies. Journals detailing his methods, my grandmother's bracelet, my medication, dozens of other personal items labeled with women's names and surrender dates. But it was the collection of unauthorized recordings from tracking devices planted on multiple women that elevated the charges to serious criminal offenses. Grant had documented his own crimes meticulously, believing himself too clever to be caught. As they led him away through the stunned office, Warren approached me, face ashen. "There's going to be an emergency HR meeting tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "We need to understand the full extent of what happened." What no one realized yet was that Grant's arrest was just the beginning. The emergency meeting would reveal something none of them expected, something that would transform not just my future, but the entire company's culture. Because what Grant never understood about me was this: I didn't just want escape from my tormentor. I wanted something far more powerful. I wanted change. The emergency HR meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the largest conference room. By 8:30, I arrived to find executives from headquarters I'd never seen before, looking grave in tailored suits. Legal representatives with notepads, Warren pacing by the windows, security personnel stationed discreetly by the doors. The weight of what was about to happen pressed against my chest as I took my seat. "Thank you for coming, Lexi," said a woman who introduced herself as the Chief Operations Officer. "We understand this is difficult, but we need to understand exactly what happened." I nodded, my evidence folder on the table before me. The room filled quickly, department heads, HR representatives, the IT director, and my design team colleagues, all avoiding my eyes except Devin, who offered a small nod of encouragement. "Before we begin," the COO continued, "I want to assure you that yesterday's arrest has the company's full attention. We're committed to understanding how this situation developed and remained unaddressed." "With respect," I replied, "it didn't remain unaddressed. It remained unbelieved." The room shifted uncomfortably. "That's why we're here," the head of HR said, "to understand the full scope of what occurred." I opened my evidence folder. I've prepared a timeline documenting the harassment pattern, beginning 3 months ago when I joined the company. For the next 40 minutes, I presented my evidence methodically, the The progression from subtle undermining to active sabotage, the stolen items, the corrupted files, the tracking device, the coordinated isolation tactics. As I spoke, expressions changed from professional concern to disturbed disbelief. When I played the audio recordings of Grant's threats and his phone conversations discussing his methods, several people visibly recoiled. The legal representative paused, searching for words. This shows planning and malice beyond anything I've encountered in 15 years of employment law. There's more, I said quietly, reaching for the final section of my folder. Yesterday, the police shared what they discovered in Grant's apartment. I distributed copies of the police report summary. The room fell silent as they read. 17 women, whispered Warren, looking up from the document, across 6 companies, over 9 years. A pattern of targeting high-potential female employees who might threaten his position, the COO read aloud. Collection of personal items cataloged by victim name. Detailed journals documenting methods of psychological manipulation and professional sabotage. Devon's voice broke the stunned silence. You weren't even his first target here. Emma Barlow from accounting. She left after 2 months last year. Said this environment wasn't supportive enough. The police found her medication in his collection. I confirmed, along with items from other employees who left suddenly. The head of HR's face had drained of color. We conducted exit interviews. None of them mentioned harassment. Because Grant's methods were designed to make them doubt themselves, I explained, to appear unstable if they complained. He created situations where reporting would damage their credibility. The COO leaned forward. You mentioned recordings that especially concerned the authorities? This was the moment. I took a breath. Grant didn't just track his targets. He recorded them, private conversations, phone calls with family members, even in their homes through tracking devices like the one he planted on me. I connected my laptop to the conference room screen and played a compilation the police had permitted me to share. Grant's voice narrating his techniques, while playing recordings of women breaking down in private after his public humiliations. His laughter as he described watching one victim lose a major client opportunity through his sabotage, his detailed planning for who to target next, and most damning, his conversations with 2 senior employees at Brookfield, discussing which women might be problems and needed management. Names were mentioned, dates, specific incidents. 2 executives abruptly excused themselves from the room. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. The legal representative was writing furiously. The COO's hands were trembling slightly. Those 2 executives he mentioned, the HR director finally said, they've been with the company 15 years and facilitated harassment for much of that time, apparently, the COO replied coldly. Their employment ended the moment they left this room. She turned to me. Ms. Alexandra, words cannot express our horror at what you've endured, nor our gratitude for bringing this to light. Had you simply left like the others, this predatory behavior would have continued unchecked. That's why I didn't leave, I said simply. His pattern works because isolation makes victims feel powerless. I refuse to be powerless. The meeting continued for hours. Every aspect of the company's reporting structures, hiring practices, and management training was scrutinized. By afternoon, immediate action plans were being implemented. New harassment reporting protocols, anonymous ethics channels, mandatory training, and external audits of department cultures. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of police interviews, legal proceedings, and company restructuring. Grant remained in custody, denied bail due to evidence suggesting he might contact potential witnesses. The 2 executives implicated in his recordings were under investigation. Former victims came forward, strengthening the case against him. At work, the atmosphere transformed. Warren stepped down as department head, acknowledging his failure to protect team members. The design team was reorganized under interim leadership, while a search began for a permanent director. Then came the email requesting my presence in the COO's office. Walking in, I found her alongside the CEO and chief legal counsel. Please sit, Lexi, the CEO said, using my preferred name for the first time. We've been discussing your future with the company. My stomach tightened. Despite everything, part of me still feared repercussions. Your handling of this situation demonstrated exceptional courage and professionalism, he continued. But we recognize that continuing here might carry difficult associations. Are you suggesting I leave? I asked directly. Quite the opposite, the COO interjected. We're creating a new position, Director of Workplace Culture and Safety. It would involve overseeing implementation of our new protocols, training programs, and serving as liaison between employees and management on cultural concerns. The CEO nodded. We believe someone who's experienced these issues firsthand would bring valuable perspective. The position reports directly to the executive committee with appropriate compensation and authority. I blinked, processing their words. You're offering me a directorship? We're offering you the opportunity to transform this company from within, the legal counsel clarified, to ensure what happened to you and those before you never happens again. 2 months later, I stood before the company's assembled staff, presenting the new workplace safety initiatives. My designer's eye had crafted visual materials that communicated with clarity and impact. My personal experience informed every policy and procedure. As I outlined the anonymous reporting system, mandatory management training, and zero-tolerance policies, I felt something I hadn't since joining Brookfield Pride. The changes weren't limited to our company. When news of Grant's arrest became public, other firms in our industry began reviewing their practices. 3 of his previous employers contacted me for consultation on implementing similar protections. Then came the day of Grant's sentencing hearing. I sat in the courtroom alongside 5 other women who'd come forward, former colleagues from various companies, all bearing similar stories. When Grant entered in handcuffs, he looked diminished, his confident posture replaced with slumped shoulders. The judge reviewed the case details grimly. The evidence demonstrates a calculated pattern of workplace terrorism spanning nearly a decade. The defendant used his professional position to systematically harass, stalk, and psychologically torture women he perceived as threats to his status. Grant's attorney offered weak mitigations: stress, competitive pressure, misunderstandings. Then the judge delivered the sentence: 7 years imprisonment for multiple stalking, harassment, illegal surveillance, and theft charges. Additionally, a lifetime ban from working in corporate environments with direct reports and restraining orders protecting all identified victims. As he was led away, Grant looked back once, his eyes meeting mine. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I simply watched as he disappeared through the courtroom door, his power permanently broken. Outside the courthouse, the other women gathered around me. When I left my job, I thought I was alone, one said quietly, that I'd failed somehow. He counted on our silence, another added, on shame keeping us isolated. That ends today. I replied, not just for us, but for everyone who comes after us. My revenge wasn't just watching Grant's arrest or seeing his prison sentence handed down. It wasn't the promotion or the policy changes. My true revenge was transforming my personal nightmare into protection for countless others. 2 years later, the workplace culture initiative I developed had been adopted by 37 companies across the country. Grant remained in prison, his appeals denied. I'd been promoted to the executive committee, the youngest member in company history. My designs were winning industry recognition, no longer undermined by sabotage. But my greatest satisfaction came from mentoring young women entering the field, creating the supportive environment I'd been denied. Each time a new employee commented on the company's exceptional culture, each time someone used the reporting system successfully, each time a potential problem was addressed before becoming harassment, I counted these as victories. My grandmother's bracelet, recovered from Grant's apartment, now rests on my wrist as I lead meetings in the same conference room where he once belittled me. The company where he sought to destroy me now bears the imprint of my vision, not just in building designs, but in its very foundation. Some might call this success the best revenge. I call it justice, not just for me, but for everyone who deserves to be valued for their talent, rather than targeted for it. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content that shines light on workplace issues many face in silence. Your comments help others know they're not alone. Have you witnessed or experienced workplace harassment? Sharing our stories is the first step toward changing toxic cultures everywhere.